Welcome back to Investing Talk podcast. Today we're taking a close look at Wolfspeed, a company that's really right at the forefront of silicon carbide technology. One of you actually sent in a whole collection of recent reports and analyses, which was great. And our job today is basically to boil it all down. What's the essential stuff you need to understand about Wolfspeed right now? Think of it as your shortcut to getting up to speed. We've got info on their recent financials, where they stand in the market, potential risks, opportunities, what analysts are saying. The mission is pretty clear. Pull out the key insights and help you understand what it all means for the company's future.
It really is a fascinating case study, isn't it? You've got this company with undeniable tech leadership in silicon carbide, a field with just massive growth potential. But they're also hitting some, well, very real financial and market roadblocks right now. It's that classic tension, innovation versus the current realities.
Okay, so let's start with the financials, their recent performance. Q3 fiscal 25 revenue came in at $185.4 million. Now, that's actually down about 7.6% from the $201 million they did the year before. And interestingly, just a tiny bit below the forecast of $185.66 million. That small dip in what's supposed to be a growing market, it does raise a question, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
You have to ask, does this mean they're maybe feeling some competitive pressure?
Mm-hmm.
Or perhaps some pricing headwinds? Even a small miss needs explaining in that context.
Yeah, while the overall silicon carbide market is growing, that slight dip suggests Wolfspeed might be facing some specific hurdles right now, impacting their ability to really capture all that growth.
Precisely. And you see more of that picture when you look at the bottom line.
Right. The net loss was $285.5 million. That's 1.86 per share for the quarter. Now, their adjusted loss per share was negative $0.72. That was actually better than the negative $0.82 analysts expected, which is, a positive surprise in a way.
True. Beating the adjusted loss estimate is something. But it's still a loss. And it's a bigger loss than they had in the same quarter last year. So that adjusted EPS figure, while better than expected for the quarter, is still heading in the wrong direction year over year. They're definitely still operating in the red.
And that lack of profitability is, well, it's a key concern. They don't have a meaningful price-to-earnings ratio because, well, the earnings are negative.
Right. And while that's not entirely unusual for tech companies pouring money into growth, it's a metric investors watch like a hawk, especially given everything else.
Speaking of everything else, let's talk cash. They reported $1.3 billion in cash and equivalents. On the surface, that sounds pretty healthy, a decent cushion.
Does seem like a solid number.
But in that same quarter, their free cash flow was negative $168 million, a significant outflow. What does that kind of cash burn tell us, especially when they're supposed to be scaling up?
That outflow really highlights the sheer cost of what they're doing. They're making huge investments to ramp up production, particularly that big shift to the larger 200-millimeter silicon carbide wafers. That transition is critical. It means more chips per wafer, potentially lower unit costs, more volume to meet that expected EV demand.
So the outflow is directly tied to that expansion and the restructuring.
Very likely. Closing older facilities, like the ones in Farmers Branch and Durham, reducing the workforce by about 25%. Those are major restructuring moves aimed at efficiency and eventually getting to cash flow break-even. But yes, the upfront costs and the investments in the new tech, like the 200-millimeter lines, drive that cash outflow right now. It underscores how capital-intensive this transition is.
Okay, and zooming out a bit, the reports mention fluctuating revenue growth over the past few years. Driven by the market expansion, sure, but also hit recently by oversupply issues and this restructuring. We don't have the exact debt-to-equity ratio here, but the fact they're talking with lenders, that suggests potential concerns about their leverage, right?
It's definitely something investors need to watch.
Mm-hmm.
In semiconductor manufacturing, which eats up capital, especially when you're unprofitable and burning cash, your balance sheet health is paramount. Lenders will want to see a clear path to profit and sustainable cash flow. So discussions with lenders probably indicate that leverage is a focus point that needs active management. The return on equity is likely negative too, given the net losses.
Let's shift focus a bit to the business itself, the industry context. Wolfspeed's big strength is being a global leader in 6T technology, that proprietary material science expertise. Sounds like a strong competitive advantage.
It has been, absolutely. Their IP and being an early mover gave them a head start, but the landscape is shifting. That move to 200-millimeter wafers is crucial to stay competitive on cost and volume. However, as we mentioned, they're now facing this market oversupply situation and, importantly, rising competition. especially from China.
So that initial moat might not be quite as wide as it once seemed.
It's certainly being tested.
Yeah.
How well they maintain market share and pricing power with more players jumping in, that's a key question now.
And those exact issues, oversupply, competition, are listed as key risks. Alongside the usual semiconductor market ups and downs, the cyclicality and geopolitical tensions messing with supply chains and tariffs.
Definitely. So while the long-term growth drivers are their EVs, industrial automation, renewables needing SiC, some analysts are understandably bearish near-term. It's a mix of powerful tailwinds and potentially strong headwinds.
It's good news, though, that their 200-millimeter products have apparently hit industry-leading quality marks. That suggests the core tech is still sound.
That's a very important point. It confirms their technological capability, even amidst the financial pressures.
Okay, let's talk management. Robert Furl is CEO, steering them through this expansion and this major restructuring. Sounds like a tough job right now.
Extremely demanding, leading through a major operational shift, market headwinds, financial strain. It requires really strong leadership.
And then there's the CFO departure. Neil Reynolds leaving effective May 30th, right in the middle of this critical phase where they're trying to strengthen their capital position.
Yeah, the timing isn't ideal. Finding a permanent CFO replacement quickly will be a top priority, no doubt. Investors will be watching that closely.
In those restructuring efforts, closing facilities in Farmers Branch in Durham by year-end, cutting the workforce by roughly a quarter, those are pretty drastic steps.
They are significant. It signals a serious attempt to right-size operations and align costs with the current reality, aiming for that cash flow break-in point. Short-term pain, impacting people, and potentially causing disruption, but possibly necessary for long-term health if it leads to real cost savings and efficiency gains.
Now, looking at valuation and risk, the price-to-book ratio is mentioned as likely elevated. Even with the stock price drop, no dividend, which is typical for growth tech, but that beta around 1.62. That signals significantly higher volatility than the overall market, doesn't it?
It does. A beta over 1 means the stock tends to move more percentage-wise than the market average, both up and down. It reflects the higher perceived risk, but also the potential for higher returns or losses. Investors need to be comfortable with bigger swings.
And risk-wise, there's that class action lawsuit investigation started in April over the stock price drop claims. That can't help sentiment. Plus the ongoing supply chain and tariff risks impacting sales projections. How should you factor these kinds of things in?
Legal issues, macroeconomic uncertainty, they always add layers of risk and potential volatility. Even the restructuring itself, while intended to help, carries execution risk. You really have to weigh these uncertainties against that long-term potential and decide based on your own risk tolerance.
Let's touch on the stock performance itself and what analysts think. It sounds like a roller coaster. Shares jumped right after the Q3 results came out, probably because they beat that adjusted loss number we talked about.
That initial pop, yeah.
But then a sharp drop as investors seem to digest the bigger picture, the financial challenges, the restructuring implications.
Exactly. That reaction really shows how sensitive the market is to Wolfspeed news right now. Beating on one adjusted metric wasn't enough to offset worries about overall profitability, cash flow, and the restructuring path.
And the numbers are stark. Down roughly 50% year to date, down about 86% over the past year, though there was that rebound before this latest volatility. Analyst sentiment is all over the place too. 4 strong buys, 4 holds, 1 moderate sell, 3 strong sells. A real mix.
That wide dispersion really captures the current uncertainty, doesn't it? The buys are likely betting on the long-term Sing-Maggie story and Wolfspeed's tech leadership. The holds and sells reflect serious concerns about navigating the current financial crunch and executing the turnaround. And the expectation that full-year losses for fiscal 25 will actually increase, maybe by around 22% to $3.99 per share, certainly fuels that caution.
So just to make sure everyone's clear, can you give us a quick recap of what Wolfspeed actually does? We know CNAP, but what are the products, the markets?
Sure. They specialize in wide bandgap semiconductor materials, primarily silicon carbide, CCC, but also gallium nitride, GE gain. These materials are just better than traditional silicon for high-power, high-frequency applications, much more efficient. Their products range from the basic materials, the wafers, the epi wafers, up to finished devices like diodes, MOSFETs, power modules, and also RF components.
And where do these end up? Which industries rely on this tech?
A lot of high-growth areas. Electric vehicles are huge. COC improves range and charging speed. EV charging infrastructure itself needs it. Renewable energy, like solar and wind power conversion. industrial power supplies, also telecommunications, 5G infrastructure, and even aerospace and defense. It's quite broad.
And they used to be Cree, right? Rebranded in 2021 to Wolfspeed.
That's right. A very deliberate name change to emphasize that silicon carbide focus. They're based in Durham, North Carolina, but operate globally.
Looking longer term, before this recent plunge, say the prior 6 months or even year, the stock had seen some positive movement, right? Driven by that EV semiconductor demand.
Yes. Prior to the recent, more acute concerns setting in, the market did seem to appreciate the long-term potential. There was significant appreciation over parts of the last year, reflecting excitement about silicon adoption and their capacity expansions. The recent drop shows how quickly sentiment can sour when financial performance and near-term outlook falter.
And longer-term financials, before this latest period, did show strong top-line growth, especially from Silicon and EVs. There were signs of narrowing losses, maybe moving towards profitability improvements in some quarters.
Correct. That history shows the underlying demand is real. They were making progress, suggesting the investments were starting to pay off before these current headwinds intensified. It highlights the potential if they can navigate through this rough patch.
Okay, so let's try to crystallize the strengths and red flags from all this. Strengths: market leadership in silica, diverse end markets, strong R&D, global footprint. Red flags: semiconductor cyclicality, huge capital needs for manufacturing, current unprofitability, restructuring challenges, competition. Anything else major?
I think you've hit the main ones. The long-term trends supporting size adoption are a massive strength. But balancing that against the constant need for investment, the market volatility, and now execution risk on the restructuring. That's the core challenge.
And market sentiment before the recent drop seemed generally positive. Analyst ratings mostly bullish, some social media buzz about EV efficiency.
Generally, yes. And news often highlighted partnerships for scaling production. Competitively, they're up against giants like Infineon on semiconductor, STMicroelectronics. But Wolfspeed's pure-play focus on wide bandgap materials, especially for things like EV drivetrains, does make them stand out.
How important is that pure play focus, really?
It can be a significant advantage, allows them to concentrate all their resources and expertise on Sionjan and Heligan. If they manage the current issues well, that focus could really pay off in a high-growth market.
Okay, let's wrap this up. Wolfspeed is clearly a company with significant potential, a leader in a technology that's critical for the future of transport and energy. But as we've laid out from these reports, they are navigating some really serious challenges right now. Market oversupply, major restructuring, financial pressures, investor concerns hitting the stock price.
The real balancing act.
Exactly. And here's the interesting part. The tech advantage seems solid, but can they manage the operations, the capital investments, effectively enough to really capitalize on that growing demand? That leads to the big question for you, the listener. How do you weigh that long-term potential of a pioneering tech company against these very real, very immediate short-term headwinds and market uncertainties?
It's the central dilemma for anyone looking at this stock right now.
Thank you for joining us for this look into Wolfspeed. Hope you found it useful. If you did, please remember to subscribe, like, and maybe leave us a comment with your thoughts. We'll see you next time on Investing Talk Podcast.